the date of legalization, there's a review process now to go back and look at those and see if some of those can be either vacated or amended, depending on what the charges were. So that one did pass. So that's HB 639. The next three, I think, are really important. And by the way, there is no way I'm going to go through 70 of these. We want to wake up a little bit on Monday morning, but these are big ones for the state, so I think these are important. But these three made corrections to the retirement system, and not just to any retirement system, but the one that included our first responders, so the firefighters and police officers. And I am huge on doing whatever we can to help them out. But HB 250, so it's HB 250, 436, and 571, they all made corrections to the retirement system. HB 250 in particular provides accidental benefits payable for police officers and firefighters. And as I learned when my husband was running across America for firefighter cancer, our firefighters are actually prone to more cancers, more severe cancers. And so anything we can do to help them out, to maybe help get that recognized and make things like that payable, because those are on-job illnesses and injuries. So it's important to have those. That did also pass. So HB 601 also passed. And what this is big. So this is actually for the kids. It will automatically enroll children on Medicaid into the free and reduced lunch program. So it used to be that families had to go ahead and reapply again. And we saw actually a drop off in kids applying as they got older. It wasn't necessarily because they didn't need the food, they did, and we certainly don't want any kids to go hungry. It was because of having to fill out more paperwork and the stigma and all that. So that was good, get kids fed. But speaking on Medicaid, with an overwhelming vote of 333 to 12, New Hampshire will add its name to the list of states that are calling on the federal government to preserve Medicare and Social Security without cuts to benefits. So that was HR 7. I think that anything that has a 7, I'm always tuned into, but this one especially. So this is great to preserve that for our seniors. The passing of HB 240 will now head to the Senate to see if they agree with something that I think is a huge thing for anybody, and I'm not sure, but we want to make sure that we codify this. So it's the equal access to marriage by recognizing the marriage of two people from different races. Believe it or not, in 2023, we don't have that on the books. We actually don't have anything making sure that we're recognizing in this state. Now, it doesn't mean that's not happening. It just means if there is some switch in the federal government or whatever, that's the only law that's now allowing that interracial marriage. So that's also a really important thing. We have HR 8, which was pretty contested, and I understand why. I think in this state especially, this is an interesting one, but this is actually one on firearms. So this one was urging Congress to enact legislation regulating and banning certain semi-automatic assault weapons and large capacity ammunition feeding devices. This one came about because as we're watching things happen in the United States and this disturbing trend in the United States where firearms have literally become the number one cause of death in children. And by the way, the United States sits alone in that. Of no other similar country in size or wealth has firearm deaths even in the top 4. So we are sitting there all by ourselves, and that has become the number one cause of death in children, which is terrifying. And you're seeing it a lot in situations where we have mass shootings with these, large capacity ammunition. We also, we saw in Uvalde police scared to actually go into the school because the shooter had something that could pierce their Kevlar vests. For me, that's just a no-starter. However, people feel strongly about that, and that actually didn't pass. So that 181 to 162 became inexpedient to legislate. So that one will have to sit on the table for at least 2 years. Nothing else will be done on that particular bill. So as the day wore on, and by the way, you might have seen the speaker on it actually had her baby at the well, not as a prop or anything. She actually has to bring her baby to session, and it's fantastic that she can. We actually have one Republican that has her baby, and we have one Democrat that has their baby. They're both feeding their babies, and, it's amazing, and it's kind of nice to go back, on a stressful time and see this little baby grinning. as you walk past. So she did have her baby up there, gave a very impassioned speech, and but it just reminds us that that kids are important. So, and we need to really be thinking about what we're doing for their safeguards. So as that day wore on, the weather and road conditions became questionable in some parts of the state, and the attendance of the two sides started to shift a bit. There were a couple of bills that the week before, on the 14th, had actually been tabled that were priorities in the Democratic Party that we really felt like we wanted to get off. Now, something gets tabled when the one party really doesn't want it to be ITL, which is an expedient to legislate, and the other party doesn't want it to pass. So we just kind of, rather than dealing with it right then, we put it on the table to kind of bring back up later and talk about it more. So there were two bills that were big that we thought were really important. As the things started to shift, first we tried to bring up one once earlier in the day to bring it off the table. It didn't happen. It was actually a tie vote. The speaker voted to tie the vote, which he can do that. He doesn't always vote, but he usually does if it's like within one, and we're actually having a lot of those votes this session. However, we noticed a trend starting to happen. Leadership started to notice a trend that we were starting to get some things passed that we thought would be a little bit harder to get passed. So we decided to try it and brought HB 430 off the table. Now, if you tuned in last week, we talked a little bit about the education freedom accounts and the voucher system for schooling. And one of the things I talked about is how it's intended to help kids who are in public school, that their public schools are failing them. However, 3,100 out of the 3,200 kids that were helped were already in private schools. So it took, $23 million from public funds for people who had already decided they could afford or wanted to have their kids going to a different school. So HB 430 is going to work on trying to make sure that that's to restore that program back to its intended purpose. We absolutely think kids should have, appropriate schooling. We think that we should be investing in our kids. And so what this did is it says that in order for a child to take advantage of the voucher program, they have to have been in public schools for at least a year. So that means you have to actually go to public school and know that it's not going to work for you, not going to work for your family, and then you could take advantage of that program. Now, there are still a lot of other things that we have issues with on the voucher program, including the fact that we have a private company taking 10% of public funds. However, this is a big step. So what happens, though, is when something is tabled, you have to first vote to bring it off the table. And then there are about 5 other votes that happen, and it gets pretty wild. So you have to go back and forth. And so as we continued to get this, we realized, it got exciting. So we've had a lot of bills that I thought were important that we didn't quite get. But this one finally did pass. And that was super exciting. Now, if you remember, I talked about we had tried a bill earlier in the day. We didn't get it off the table. Well, once we got this one passed, there was another bill that we felt really important that we wanted to bring off that table, and it was that one that we had tried. So, HB 234. Now, what that does is it ends renewable energy certificate sweeping. So this is a partisan bill. So what this bill does is it actually makes it so that the utility companies can't just take the pieces of certificates from people before they even know it. So the companies are actually required under the Renewable Energy Fund. New Hampshire's one of 29 states that implemented a renewable portfolio standard that has to actually provide, it obligates them to acquire a percentage of electricity mix. So up until without this bill, they're just taking it from consumers. So if you have solar panels and stuff, you might not be getting all of your certificates you're supposed to get because the electric company is just taking it and then using it when they should be providing their own. So this actually will promote renewable energy in New Hampshire. This was the moment that's kind of gone a little bit more that you've seen a little bit about. So as we started that first process of voting, somebody on the Republican side said, well, if we keep voting, we're going to be here all day. They did not want to go through this. It was getting late in the day. We hadn't had a break. So the speaker immediately called for a 30-minute recess because we were ready to keep voting, which was wild. Not only did he call for recess, he kicked all the Democrats out because the Republicans were going to have a caucus. And there was absolutely, if you've ever been like on a roll and somebody says, stop, it was just human nature for everybody to go, and maybe it was a decorum issue, maybe it wasn't, but it was frustrating. We had our 30-minute recess. They called in. They tried to get some people back. They had some people gone. Unfortunately for them, they could not get everybody back. So this bill did pass, and that's huge. This is actually huge for New Hampshire and for renewable energy, that we'll be able to make sure that those certificates go to the consumers that have them, and that we hold our utility companies responsible for using that electricity mix. So we're going to take a quick break right now. After the break, Carrie Spier, who is my friend and colleague, she's the rep in Ward 3. She's going to be here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about one of the bigger bills, HB 44. So we will see you soon.
Hello, I'm Ed Mullen from Nashua Aerial Advertising. Do you have a message you want to get out to a large number of people in a way that gets noticed and, more importantly, gets remembered? Aerial banners are a fantastic way to put your business name, personal message, or announcement in front of the people you need to see it. With your sign riding high in the sky where there is no competition for its attention, it gets seen, and more importantly, it gets remembered. Fly your message or advertisement over selected audiences for the best use of your advertising dollars. Every racetrack, sports stadium, state or town fair or parade or other outdoor gathering provides a ready-made venue to put your message in front of thousands of people. So take off now and call 603-484-9348. That's 603-484-9348. Nashua Aerial Advertising. The sky's not the limit, just the beginning.
Continuing the legacy started in 1904, Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument Incorporated continues to provide the same high-quality monument, custom headstone, and stoneworking craftsmanship today that they built their reputation on over 100 years ago. Servicing Nashua, New Hampshire, as well as nearby areas in Massachusetts, such as Lowell, Billerica, Chelmsford, and beyond. From creating custom monuments to memorialize, to landscaping and granite work or restorative services, each job is done to your satisfaction and is backed by decades of experience and integrity. If you're thinking about stonework, think Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument. Visit online at gatecitymonument.com. Stop by and meet Roger at 321 West Hollis Street in Nashua, or call 603-883-7141. That's 603-883-7141. Gate City Monument, memorials of distinction for people who care.
Green flag goes in the air, and we're racing at Auto Club Speedway of Southern California.
Trouble for Kyle Larson. Back straightaway was in a battle with Christopher Bell off of turn number 2. That car has suddenly slowed.
Blaney in one, out one, and he leads under the caution flag. A penalty being handed out by NASCAR. Kyle Busch busted for speeding. Chastain won a stage last week in Daytona. He's going to get the stage win here this afternoon at Auto Club.
Green flag goes back in the air, and there's contact. Ty Dillon goes around. Eric Almirola's in the crash. Ryan Blaney's in the mix. Ryan Preece is crashing as well. Christopher Bell gets a big chunk of it.
Chastain across the line. Green and white checkered flag is out, and he won stage 1. He backs it up. He wins stage 2.
Kyle Busch has finally pulled the trigger down to the inside of Ross Chastain. Kyle Busch takes the lead.
His first win came here. His 61st win will come here at the Auto Club Speedway for Kyle Busch.
The Village Network was created for only one reason: to keep those 62 and older in their home as long as possible, ideally for the rest of their life. The Village Network is the answer for children who do not live nearby and worry about their parents being able to remain independently and safely at home. The Village Network has a network of trusted providers and volunteers who provide transportation, home repair, home-delivered meals, grocery shopping, and others who are there to help when you need them. We can even find someone to walk your dog. The Village Network does not charge thousands of dollars of upfront costs for services you may never need. With the Village Network, you only pay for services when you need them. Become a member of the Village Network today by calling 603-891 603-891-0008. That's 603-891-0008. The Village Network. Become a member today.
The Reading Foundation provides evaluation and tutorial programs based upon the Orton Gillingham philosophy of learning, based upon the study of language, how children acquire language, and the mechanisms involved in learning. All the learning pathways of the brain, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile, are addressed and strengthened to build a strong foundation for the acquisition of reading skills. If you are interested in learning more, please contact the Reading Foundation for more information. The Reading Foundation is at 10 Northern Boulevard, Unit 19, Amherst, New Hampshire, 03031. Or you can email us at readingfoundation_rf@yahoo.com. And of course, you can call anytime at 603-882-0992. The Reading Foundation, Amherst, New Hampshire.
My name is Louis Chipola. I am the adjutant and quartermaster of Nashua VFW Post 483, located at 8 East Pearl Street in Nashua, New Hampshire. The Veterans of Foreign Wars is here to help veterans with problems. We can refer you to the proper agencies that can help provide you with other veterans to talk to and make new friends that understand what you have experienced. Of course, we are always looking for new members. Veterans of all American conflicts are welcome to join the VFW. You must have served at least 30 consecutive days in a theater or 60 days interrupted. Service in Korea is still open for enrollment in the VFW. We are sponsoring this program to try and reduce the number of veteran suicides, which now run about 20 per day. Help is in this cause. The office at the post is open each Tuesday and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Stop by and talk to us or call 603-402-2992. We are here to help you.
Hi, my name's Alicia, and you're listening to the Alicia Gregg Show on WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 FM, and streaming live on WSMN.live. I am excited to be back here after the break with my colleague and friend, Carrie Spier. She is a fellow rep from Ward 3. And we're going to talk a little bit about HB 44, which was to add housing and stuff in a few minutes. But first, I just want to let people get to know you, Carrie, a little bit. So what is your background before getting into
Hi, Alicia.
this?
Thank you for having me on your show. My background is engineering. I have degrees in electrical engineering, computer science, and systems engineering. I've worked on the lunar module. I've worked on the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-35. I've had a very long career with military aerospace.
That's fantastic. Now, you're retired from that, but you do have a pretty interesting, is it a hobby or is it another job or what is it that you do?
It is a hobby, although at times I have worked with National Geographic. What I do is I go around the world and I film endangered large animals. We got back from Borneo just before the election, and I'm going to be going to Botswana just after the session closes for this year.
What's your favorite place that you've been and the animal that you photographed?
I'd have to say it would be the large mountain gorillas in Uganda and Rwanda. There were a couple of cases where we interacted with them a lot closer than what we were planning. A female gorilla was watching my husband film a baby. He got too close to the baby, so the female gorilla, who weighs about 700 pounds,
Yikes.
came charging over and knocked him to the ground. And myself and the guide thought it was the funniest thing we ever saw. Later on, a young silverback. A silverback is when a male gets to be of age. Their backs get this silver color to them. Came over and tried to challenge him to pulling tree trunks out of the ground. Danny lost, of course.
I was going to say, how did Danny do with that?
He did not do well. And he had to end up, the guide told us that he should stand there very still and look down at the ground and be very submissive. And I thought that was pretty funny, and I got a good picture of that. So I think those are my favorite times, although we've seen some amazing situations with animals all around the world, and I'm really hoping to get some really good shots of cheetahs in Botswana.
That's incredible. Now, is there one animal that you've ever gone to photograph that you did not find, that you did
Yes.
not get a photograph of?
And it was heartbreaking. We went to Borneo, which is not an easy country to be in the bush with, because the forests there are prime forests, which means they have never, since the beginning of time, ever been cut down.
Wow.
So they have a lot of very strange critters in them. And we got up every morning at, I want to say about 3:30 in the morning, went out in our rented truck thing. I don't know what to call it. It's a small pickup truck that you sit in the back out in the open, driving around, trying to find in the middle of the night, while it's still dark out, there's cheetahs because they only come out at night. Getting a few hours of sleep, then going back out again later on at night, like around 9 o'clock when it gets dark again. We did that for as many days as we could afford to spend there, which I think was about 3 or 4. Meanwhile, there was we never did get to see, we saw droppings from the cheetah, but we didn't see the cheetah.
Oh.
Meanwhile, there was a group there that was, it was 2 women and a man that was on a research study. They'd been there 10 days, and they finally saw the cheetahs 2 hours or 3 hours after we turned in. And they showed us the pictures. And I thought they did a wonderful job, but I was very envious.
I'm sure.
And that was it.
That would be disappointing. So you're happily retired. You're getting to go around and take these beautiful pictures. What made you think, you know what, New Hampshire State Legislature, let's get involved?
Excuse me. I've lived in other parts of the country, and I've worked in other parts of the world. And I started working over at BAE Systems, and I started really getting involved in the community. That is to say, taking everything the community had to offer, hiking and biking and kayaking and skiing. Well, not me so much, but my husband skis. And the restaurants and getting involved with people that live here, and including dog walking. And I got to see that of all the places I've lived, I really love it here. And so I said, how can I best serve Nashua? And I thought that the best thing I could do is serve the interests of Nashua at the State House. So I'm giving it a try.
Fantastic. Well, and that's how I got to meet you, is when you started to run. And it's been fantastic getting to know you. So and I think this is one thing that's interesting. I had that same kind of fall in love with Nashua. I'd lived a lot of places, came here and thought, wow, this is where I definitely want to have my roots set up. So there's something that we had the other day that came up that I know you've done some research on, one of the bills and stuff. And I listened to, you actually gave a speech on the floor, which is a little intimidating, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's knowing it's on YouTube and there. But it really had a lot of information on it. Now, the bill is HB 44. It did not pass. There was actually some Democrats that voted against it, Republicans voted against it. So there was a little of each on either side. But it's actually caused quite a stir since online. I know that you're not on social media as much, but I've seen a lot of talk about it. And I understand we're down 20,000 homes in New Hampshire as far as like how many homes we need and stuff. And so I think some people thought this as maybe a good idea of a bill that would add more housing. So can you give me a little brief description on what is the mandate on HB 44? What would it have done?
The mandate on HB 44, now this is an unfunded mandate, which means the state is not going to pay for anything.
Mm-hmm.
That any single-family lot can be divided into 4 townhouses. The owner of the lot doesn't have to live there. They could sell it to a builder. They could sell it to a developer. They could do what they want with it. 4 townhouses, which could be turned into rentals, Airbnbs, anything they want. Mm-hmm. And it could be right next door to your house.
So there was something particular, right? You had to have did you have to have sewer and so?
Well, therein lies the problem.
Okay.
New Hampshire built their sewer system back with WPA money during the Depression. That's in the 1930s. They started building it around 1933. They finished it around 1930s, beginning of 36 or thereabouts. Mm-hmm. At that time, the pipes were put in, and they were made essentially out of a hard clay kind of composite. a mixture, I would have to say. Sometimes they were an unconstructed, I guess, cement. They built this sewer. Now, you have to understand that at that time, Nashua looked pretty much like it does today. My house was built in 1908. It's still standing on the same property. Many of the houses around here are exactly where they were 100 years ago.
Right.
So the density has not gone down, but it has gone up. The sewer has had to grow as they do as more and more people come in. Now, the sewer system, as it was originally built, takes the drain water from the streets and puts it in the same pipes as the wastewater coming from the houses. So what that does, if there's a lot of rainwater, it fills up, and the overflow, because the alternative is for it to vent back into your house, the overflow is dumped into the Nashua and Merrimack rivers. That's untreated overflow water mixed with waste. As the town has expanded, they don't do that. But the core of the pipes that exist, like in my neighborhood, still do that. If your pipe from your house to the street, which in many of the neighborhoods around here are 100 years old, those clay pipes start to get filled with roots.
Right.
As those roots start to take up the space in there, when your house starts to eliminate the waste into the pipes, it backs up into your house. It doesn't even make it to the sewer system. It runs a fair amount of money that you have to spend to replace that stuff. Just as it does for you to replace the length from your house, it's going to cost that much for the town to expand the sewer system, to take in the additional quadrupling of the number of houses in an area to handle the waste that is coming from the additional houses. So it is not like you can just go stick 4 houses or 4 townhouses anywhere you want and expect that your sewer system is still going to be able to take it. Moreover, it's already been discovered, at least in my area and in many areas of Nashua, we don't have enough water pressure for the houses that exist. And the water pressure has dropped to the point where Pennachuck realizes they have to do something. The only thing they can do is add more pipes. That means we're going to be tearing up the streets again. We can't service reliably the people that we have. But when the town plans a new development, and the town planning is involved in that, the funding is established to increase the sewerage and to increase the water supply. Schools are funded appropriately. Services for snow removal, garbage pickup, they're all planned, and they appear the day you move in, they're there. Now, with people acting, just kind of doing whatever they want, whenever they want, with no notification to the town, there's a mandate, remember, they don't have to do anything.
And that's what HB 44 this is.
And that's what HB 44 does, says just you have the right and the town can't say anything. You have that right to go do that. This bill doesn't allow for the town to catch up with what's going on.
Right.
But there's also another part of it. Do you want to live next door to a 4-rental townhouse where the owner is absentee? Remember that this is not ADUs. This bill has nothing to do with ADUs.
Explain ADUs real quick. So
Okay.
what those are.
ADU,
Because that's something we do have here
Yes.
in Nashua.
ADUs are accessory dwelling units. Any home in Nashua, single-family lot or whatever, can build an ADU. An ADU is accessory dwelling unit that allows you to build an apartment, like in your garage, on your attic, on the side of your house, as long as you meet the setbacks. And you can build more than one. And what that does is, the assumption was that this is where you, as an older person, for instance, you could still live in your house. The ADU renters would end up paying part of your expenses, your mortgage, perhaps your taxes, and you could still live there for the rest of your life and not have to worry about moving or anything like that. And we have plenty of those ADUs. Nashua is replete with them. Manchester has the same exact law.
Yeah, and I know Manchester, one of the reps from Manchester was talking about the same issues. I don't know how many cities you looked at with the sewer issue and not having enough capacity to all of a sudden expand at this rate. But Manchester, I think, is one too that has some issues with their sewer. Now, one thing on this HB 44 that it was not and that we need desperately is affordable housing.
Right.
This was not an affordable housing bill.
No, it wasn't. And what we need, at the 20,000 that we're short, and by the way, you really need to look at what year they said 20,000.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're talking about 2 years ago when this started coming up, there was a shortage of maybe 20,000. Since then, all of the towns that are serviced by sewer and water, and in Nashua especially, and oddly enough, Merrimack. Merrimack is not as dense as we are, but it does have areas of sewer and public water. Have built many, I would say a few thousand units already of apartments and townhouses and condominiums and all sorts of housing developments. Right next to me, they're putting in 22 single families, separate kind of houses. Mm-hmm. And so it's the town is working desperately, and they're planning for the sewer and the water to catch up with the houses that they're building. What they are doing, though, is they say every development that they have anything to do with has to have a certain percentage of workforce housing, affordable housing.
Okay.
So they're selling houses. They could be very expensive, $500,000, but a certain percentage of them has to be affordable housing. That's 60% of market. If the developer chooses not to, then they have to put a percentage of money into what is called a housing fund.
Okay.
When they put it into the housing fund, the city collects it, and when they get enough money in there, they're going to build an entire project that's all affordable housing. They have many millions of dollars in that fund already, so you can see how many housing developments have been going up. They have many millions of dollars already in that fund, and they're well on their way to achieving the amount that they need to support the building of pretty extensive effort in building a workforce housing effort. The town has all this planned. They have ideas of where the land is going to be. They're working on the infrastructure plans and all the rest of that. Mandating from the state to do these 1Z, 2Z, 4Z things all over a neighborhood is not the way to get there.
Right. And you know what? I think that's one of the things, I don't know if you've found it too, but, going in Concord, you have ideas, kind of like for me, I had ideas on parenting before I actually became a parent, and pretty much I threw it all out the window once I became a parent.
Right.
But I had this idea of what we'd be doing, and then when you get up there and you really look at these bills and you have to think about, does this fix an overall problem, or could it cause more problems? Like this one, I kind of think, I hear, well, we need more. My grandma always told me more is not always better.
Right.
So, it's, there's this restaurant down at Disney World where you ask for a bottle of ketchup, and at the Wilderness Lodge, and if you say, can I have some ketchup, they all of a sudden flood your table with ketchup. So you end up with like 100 bottles of ketchup, and, it's pretty fun and everything. But what are you going to do with it? You can only do so much. So you can only before you're overrun and looking tomatoey. But I think this is one of those cases where I hear it. I think we need more housing. I definitely know we need more affordable housing. As someone who has, one child that lives here that's a young adult, knowing that, what his choices are is pretty limited. But I also know that, having this free-for-all, I can see that, one problem could be that we have outside investors. We have a lot of outside the state that don't really care about the state, coming in and doing things. And this would be one area where they would just, see it as a market to pop houses up. We have our leaf peeping. We have all this stuff. So Airbnb would be a big thing.
I could tell you two areas that really bother me about outside people coming in and doing that. But it's not just outside. We have landlords in this town that don't seem to care what kind of housing they've put up. As I've walked Ward 3 during my campaigning time, I found apartments where they were so expensive, the people that lived in them had no furniture. I saw apartments where they shared bathrooms and apartments where they share kitchens. The landlords don't care. This is not to say that there aren't plenty of good landlords.
Right.
But you don't know who's going to go into the place next to you. You just don't know. And the other area where I see out-of-state people coming in and destroying our area, and we all know about it, is St. Cobain.
Mm-hmm.
St. Cobain is the plastics company up in Merrimack that dumped years and years of PFAS into our water.
Right.
So we're fighting in our... We're isolated in Nashua a little bit, only for now. But the community, the larger community in New Hampshire, is fighting PFAS contamination of their well water and radon contamination in the well water. I read recently in a science article that they estimate that 55% of the wells in New Hampshire are contaminated with radon.
My gosh.
In the process of making ADUs, I promised I have to say this. In the process of making ADUs, don't put an apartment in your basement. It's unhealthy, and it's probably contaminated with radon. Radon hasn't, because we're on public water, we haven't been hit so far. The PFAS hasn't gotten to us, but it's being checked by those who control the water all the time. Excuse me. So we know that we're where we are with that, and the numbers are published. The radon you can't do anything about.
Right.
But because the public water system aerates the water, it eliminates the radon into the air. In your house, if you're on well water, the well water's under pressure, and you can't do that. So my suggestion is don't put an ADU in your basement.
Right. Yeah. ADUs are something, and one of the other things that you talked about. Do you need one of those?
Yeah. I'm okay.
Okay. One of the other things that you talked about, I know, in your speech was parking. And that's a whole nother, there's so many sides to this. And this is one of the things, even sitting there with my colleagues that were right next to me, and we were really discussing this particular bill. I was torn on this bill. I will honestly say I was torn, because I do see the need for housing. But one of the things that you brought up too was parking, and some people may be having to use a tricycle. So can you share kind of what you discovered about that when you were looking into this bill?
Right. New Hampshire right now, and this bill would not invalidate this. New Hampshire, at least Nashua and Manchester and other towns as well, have 1.5 spots have to be put onto your yard, included in this housing plan. So, for instance, if I put in 4 townhouses, I need to have 6 parking spaces off street, like on the side of the yard or in the front of the yard or where these townhouses go. Now, most homes don't have 1.5 people. They usually have 2, and they each have a car. You can't park in the street. You need to leave room for cars to back out of their driveway and not hit the car behind them, and to be able to see around the car that's parked next to them. You can't put the cars too close to the driveways or too close to the front of the houses, or you can't get the garbage trucks to pick up the garbage. If you put it too close, also you're blocking the snow removal. So you're going to end up with houses that don't get the snow removed from the front of in the street from the front of their house. Our streets are so narrow that in many places we've actually bought miniature-sized snowplows just so they can get down those streets. But the most important issue is if there's parking on both sides of the street, or even on one side of the street, there are many streets in Nashua where you can't get down a fire truck.
Oh, gosh.
And all you need is to have a fire in a house next to you, and you can't do anything about it.
That's frustrating. There's a lot. And I think, I was talking to my husband about it. We were talking about this particular thing, and it's almost like, we know this has to happen, but if you've ever seen all those emergency shows, when somebody has a knife in them, you don't take the knife out, right?
Yeah,
as soon
right.
as you take the knife out and you don't have everything stabilized, and I think that's the unintended consequences are really what kept me from voting for this bill. I think that there is a better way to do it without this kind of a mandate from the state level, just saying that it can happen everywhere. I mean, we're dealing with that right here. You're kind of the proposed asphalt plan is right in between us. And that's one of those things where, the city even says it can happen. But now, we're riled up and saying, well, maybe not, because we have some other things. But just kind of unleashing that could be a problem. Now Maggie Hassan actually just announced yesterday that New Hampshire is receiving $23.1 million for wastewater infrastructure projects.
So you can see that we have a problem. It's known at the national level that we have a problem.
It's known at the national, but the good news is it looks like, they're going to hopefully help with that. I was talking to somebody from Bo the other day about it, who is not in legislature, and talking to him about why I didn't. And he said, well, this is frustrating because you're basically telling me we can't do anything. And I said, well, no, we can do something, but we have to have those building blocks, right? We have to have, building blocks to get there.
Everybody keeps saying we have to do something. The town is doing things. We've put in the last year and a half, we've put in over 1,000 homes. The town is working like crazy and planning. As a matter of fact, if that asphalt thing doesn't go through, the town had a plan to put a community in there and had planned to bring in plumbing and the whole works. How it got sold out before it got sold to the asphalt company before we had a chance to do anything about it.
Right.
But don't mistake the fact that people are saying we're not doing anything with the fact that we are doing things. We definitely are trying to do this planning, and it's done at a top-down level, not looking at the bottom.
Right. Well, if there's one thing I've learned in Concord, it's that, you always have to look behind the curtain, because somebody's going to want a bill and they're looking at it a certain way, but you have to look at all the different sides. And I really appreciated kind of what you brought to that, because you are here in Nashua, and we really have, we do have a lot of houses with these ADUs, and we are populating and stuff, and there's a right way to do things. And I think that's overall what we want to do, is we want to figure out the right way to do things that's going to set us up for success, and not say, open up the floodgates to something we can't close back up that would cause more problems than what it would fix.
I will say that in the House that we started a housing commission to investigate what alternatives exist to fix this problem. HB 44 was done as an end-around kind of, let's get out there really fast. They didn't even bother to investigate what the Housing Commission was really working on, nor did they work through the Housing Commission, nor are any of the same people on the... there are a couple of people that are on the same.
Okay.
They took a... I'm sorry.
The good news is that we are still, there's something coming. So we are out of time. But this is Alicia Gregg on my show, the Alicia Gregg Show on WSMN, 1590 AM, 95.3 FM. I look forward to talking to you next week. Have a great day.